But that morning there was the trigger for me being 23 stone, not playing football, and not confident and not happy, to where I am now, definitely. Like, the people around me weren't the problem. The problem was me. And I had just been to my dad's for Christmas dinner and went over to my mum's for Christmas Day night to open presents and have a lovely, nice time and a bit of food and whatever. And mate, I just couldn't get out of my head that I was upset and I was just down and I just was crying, mate. Like, on Christmas Day, made me take responsibility. Life allows us to play the victim too often. You're stood there, butt naked, 7:30 in the morning, and your brain is going, what the fuck are you doing, Harry?
So it's not that often that we have a guest on the show where I have done his show first. And I always make the analogy of this is the away leg, but it never felt more apt in this occasion.
Yeah.
So, like, for people who don't know who Harry Purdy is, give us a little intro into who you are.
Who am I? Currently a podcaster, part-time podcaster, health and wellbeing coach, grassroots footballer, ex-grassroots football coach when I couldn't play because I was too overweight. And who am I as a person? I just want to say I'm a nice guy. You know what I mean? Wear my heart on my sleeve. Yeah. I'd like to go with that, yeah.
All right, nice guy's good. I'll take nice guy. You know, I think let's, before we go into our main topic, because we said before air that your story is definitely the thing that is driven around your brand, and it's definitely something to delve into. But I want to talk about the podcast because it's something that we're clearly both very passionate about, is running our podcasts. And your podcast has almost had a massive evolve. Like, mine it's been relatively consistent all the way through. I knew what I wanted to do. I like chatting to fitness people, but I have a wide variety of interests. Whereas, tell me a little bit about the Grassroots podcast and where it was when it started, what the aim was, and where it is now. Because it's very different now, right?
Yeah, so as most people were back in the lockdown, we'll say it quietly, we were all struggling for inspiration, like motivation. Four walls obviously were surrounding you every day, apart from the odd like run or walk or whatever that you do with a friend. And I love sport and wanted to give something back to a community that I'd been part of since I was 16 years old, really, which was playing local football or helping coach local football. So I wanted to start a podcast that spoke to local footballers and local sports people that had gone on to do well around sport. And that was literally the Grassroots Guy podcast. Start at grassroots level. How did people develop from a grassroots player and then go into the professional game, or come out of football and not play at all? And like, just speak to people about stories like that. And some of the stories, even from them, like, don't get me wrong, I had to start somewhere. And that was amazing to speak to people. I've had a guy called Jake Woolmore on, who I was really close with as a lad. And he played rugby at a like lower level, started really late in his life. And now he's ended up playing for Bristol Bears, like professional rugby, Premier League, like insane. And he's a European champion as well. So like, what a story. Like, to have that on the show was pretty cool. So how did it develop? Well, I started getting coached, Simon, mate. I started taking myself a bit more seriously with regards to my mindset, my mental health, my physical health. And I think when you get into that, you realize that the possibilities with regards to all three of those elements, your mindset, how your mental health is, what you can learn, and what you can do to make yourself physically more healthy, it just never stops. So when you're at a level, which I'm going to say, like, if we're going to use my screen as like comparison to this is the top and this is the bottom, I'm like here. And then you can speak to people that are here, learn all of their tricks of the trade whilst sharing it with the world as well. And that's what I literally love about hosting a podcast, mate.
I mean, I agree with that. I always say it sounds a bit cheeky, and I don't mean this for any people that have been guests on my show. This is not what I'm doing. But it's like if I ask people for a consult, they give me a figure. If I ask someone for a podcast, they'll ask for the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I just think that's it's the world, and it's a good thing as well because it just makes the world more accessible. There's a million podcasts out there now, and frustratingly, I wish I'd started when I first wanted to, but there's many multitudes of reasons why I couldn't. But like now, it's so much easier if you want to find inspiration, if you want to be able to talk to someone that can help you get to a sticking point, that person is close enough before. That's the benefits I think of social
100%.
media. I think there's a real. I like podcasts like yours because there's a real heart to it. But I'm not saying there isn't to these shows like mine or Modern Wisdom or Dire CEO, but like fitness, health, professional development, personal development. These are things that have kind of been everyone's talking about with good reason. But I think to start a niche podcast, which was about grassroots football, like you didn't start this with the idea of like, I'm going to be a professional podcaster. It was like, I want to speak to people that are in my area that are cool, that are interesting, and maybe 20 people will listen to it. I mean, did the thought process, obviously you take it more seriously now, but did the thought process of this being something I want to grow and put a lot of my time into ever cross your mind when you initially started, or was it just having a bit of banter with your mates?
Genuinely, I thought at one point that the list of guests that I could tap into would eventually wear itself down. And I also thought at one point as well that people would just get a little bit fed up of the same story. And actually, what was funny about it was me. And I mean no disrespect to anybody. It was me that got a little bit fed up with it because the show would start with something like, so what was Simon at a grassroots level? Then it would be, who was your grassroots role models? Who did you look up to when you were growing up? And don't get me wrong, that was it. Honestly, incredible. And it was amazing actually, because recently I spoke to you about Ryan Hemmings. It's the first proper local sports with a little bit of a twist around living with alopecia as a 23-year-old to a 30-year-old or 32-year-old as he is now. But actually, to take me back to that element of the podcast, which I hadn't done in a long time, was amazing. But did I ever think big? Not really. It wasn't until I started getting mentored by Paul Mort that I did something called the hot pen technique. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
It's basically where you, for 15 minutes, you're not allowed to stop writing. And you have to write down your biggest dreams.
I've done this, but I didn't know it was called this.
Yeah. And the podcast just kept coming up. It was like, have Frank Lampard on the podcast, have James Smith on the podcast, have Darren Cartel on the podcast. And it was like, oh, okay, deep rooted in that brain of yours somewhere, there are dreams with this thing. You need to start taking it a little bit more serious. So hence why the clips have started being released. Hence why, like, I'm getting it rebranded to be more about me and all of those sorts of things. So that's a little bit of an exclusive, by the way. Nobody knows that it's being rebranded, so it's being told to the world now.
I'm looking forward to that. Like, I do think sometimes a gloss of paint can do a big thing. Like this, you can build intrigue around this. You can build almost like a launch of a second series or a brand new version of the show, and now you've upgraded the setup. I think it's good. I think, it's. And I mean, what you mentioned earlier on about the hitting a bit of that you thought that you eventually would hit a wall of the people that you got on, and I can resonate. I can resonate with that. And I also, like looking at that story of like you kind of got a bit bored of the formula. Like I thought this. I don't get me wrong. My podcast will always have a fitness slant, always, because that's what I know. That's what I do. That's my network. But I also think that I've done this for 12 years. I also I look at podcasts I listen to, like the Under the Bar podcast, which is great. But they used to do little segments, like 10 minutes on this topic, 15 minutes with this person. And I'm like, I grew up in my life always struggling to make deeper connections. I can do small talk, and I won't want a podcast that just allows me to do small talk. I want to get out of my comfort zone. I want to speak to people about topics that I wouldn't get a chance to speak to if I met them in a bar. I want to test myself. And maybe that'll take longer because I'm not heavily niched down. And maybe that's part of the reason why I was so frustrated about algorithms, because my YouTube is going like, well, what is this guy? Is he an alien guy or is he a fitness guy? Like, yeah, but I want the conversations that broaden my mind. And I think if it's interesting for me, then there's going to be people out there like me. I am sure of it. But what did you do when you when you started to exhaust that network? Like, how did that feel? What did you do at that moment? Because I know every podcaster listening to this will feel that way. And I've certainly gone through that as well.
What did I do at the time? It was interesting because I found myself in a new network as well. So as I mentioned, and you're aware, me and your friend Rob get coached by Paul Mort. And when you get coached by Paul Mort, it opens up a phenomenally wacky, inspiring, like informative network. You've got guys that are into property development. You've got Tyler Saunders, who is the most incredible man like you'll ever meet. He's got one leg, and he is literally the fittest, most active, he's a great dad. Like, he's got everything going for him, but he suffers with limiting beliefs around the stuff that he does. So he's a coach and all those sorts of things. So it just basically, what I'm saying is, it opened up a network of people that I could talk to around the same things that we were interested in. So personal development, professional development, business, overcoming fears, overcoming limiting beliefs, anxiety, like business, all those sorts of things. And that's what I did, is I just tapped into a new, I don't want to use the word market because it's not a market, but a new network that I could talk to people about what sports they played on the side. But also, like you say, when you speak to people about why they got into self-development, or how they came over their limiting beliefs, how they came over their depression or suicidal thoughts, or even to the extent of nearly like ending it all with somebody, you said opening up an avenue of like a deeper connection with somebody in conversation. You get that when you talk to somebody about something that deep. And I almost stumbled into that, because when I do remember it, and I look back at some of the footage the other day, when I had Tyler on, we did speak about his wheelchair basketball. We did speak about his sport at school. We did speak about his role models growing up, being his parents and like friends around him and whatever. But then we spoke about having one leg and overcoming fears to being like one of the faces of Gymshark at the moment, let's just say, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, he'll be embarrassed for me saying that, but he's working with Gymshark very closely. And to just see that story and talk to somebody about that story, it opened up a new avenue. But then, like I said, that's on one level of professional development. And then I speak to Ryan Hemmings last week around local football, kicking dugouts because he's annoyed. But then somehow developing alopecia as a 23-year-old. 1 minute in May, he's got a full head of hair. By the end of the summer, he's got none on his body whatsoever. Talking to somebody about that opens up a new connection. And I know you can't, you're fully aware, and I'm fully aware that I'm going on about this, but obviously it's a topic we're both passionate about.
Yeah.
You can't predict those conversations until you've got the guest on the podcast. And that is what is interesting around being a podcaster. It's, it's going to click with your guest if you don't know them on a personal level or not. And I know I've gone on a full tangent away from the original question, but I think that kind of gives you an idea around how you go about booking people when you are hitting that wall.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And it's interesting you say about you can't really understand the level of conversation you're about to get into with anybody until you click a time on the call. Some of the best conversations have not been people that are big names, not been necessarily the ones I was most excited about. We just got on the topic and it clicked and it worked well. And Like the greatest example of this is Pat Davidson. Now, Pat is a big guest. Pat is a well-known man, and he's funny and he's interesting, and he's got a world of research about hypertrophy and strength and all this sort of stuff. But in every show, we've talked about his mental health problems more than training. And the last episode, we talked about ayahuasca. And it's an episode where I stayed pretty much silent for the whole episode and just occasionally kept it going or interjected when I needed to put a bit of control back into the show. And I'm like, that to me is not what I knew what was going to happen the third time with the ayahuasca one, but in the first 2 episodes, I never knew where that conversation was going. And I think that's just something that's quite incredible, you know. And so I spoke to a guy called Chris Van Vliet, I talk about because he's one of the nicest dudes. And he was someone I admired and looked up to for years, interviewing pro wrestlers. And, you know my love of pro wrestling from the time I came to the show. And just hearing him talk about that and what they're like behind the scenes was like, you kind of knew that was what he was going to talk about, but it was just like, it's so interesting to sort of hear that stuff. So, like, moving in a slight left field, but, like, you mentioned the name Paul Mort quite a lot. What impact has Paul had on your life?
Wow. He'll love this. His ego will shoot through the roof if it couldn't anymore. What impact has Paul Mort had on my life?
So before you say, in that case then, Paul, if you end up listening to this clip, feel free to come on the show anytime and just brag about anything you want.
Do you know what? I'll have a word. I'm not saying that he'll do it, but I'll have a word. That's such a massive question. Do you know what the biggest impact Paul's had on my life with? And I've just thought about is he's made me take responsibility. Why? Because controversial subject, life allows us to play the victim too often. And when I stumbled across Paul's content online, it made me realize that the people around me weren't the problem. The problem was me. Which, like, I'm hearing myself talk here and I'm like, Harry, you've got to go deep here. You're just being surface level. So I was 23 stone. I wasn't actually 23 stone when I met Paul, but I was probably 19, 20. Wasn't very happy. Was in and I mean no disrespect to anybody when I said I was unhappy in a relationship and I didn't know why. And if like this person is listening, it's genuinely not because of them. They were like a lovely person and their family was lovely and they had a lot going for them, but it was me. Like, that was it. It was me. I needed to get myself happy to be happy in a relationship, right? What else was wrong? The story that I rely on. The story that resonates the most with me was Christmas Day 2020. I was in a state of low mood, let's say. I'll never say, I probably have been depressed, but I'll never use that label. And I had just been to my dad's for Christmas dinner and went over to my mum's for Christmas Day night to open presents and have a like lovely, nice time and bit of food and whatever. And mate, I just couldn't get out of my head that I was upset and I was just down and I just was crying, mate. Like on Christmas Day, the worst, obviously, like my mum and her now husband were absolutely incredible, fully supportive. And they always have been. Like, shout out to my mum. She's amazing. And shout out to my dad as well. But that was the moment there, that specific one where I was like, right, mate, time to do something about this. And do you know what? This is exclusive as well. I never wanted or never had a desire, that's the wrong word as well, or compulsion to ever end anything. But because I labeled myself as a catastrophizer, I would think that I was in these moods and then think worst case scenario, oh, you're not feeling very happy, Harry. One day, like, you might end up like one of these male statistics. And what those thoughts like would just go round and round in my head, which of course that wouldn't make you very happy, would it? So anyway, Paul Mort. Stumbled across Paul, joined his low ticket course called Unstoppable 28. And fundamentally, within that course, it makes you take control, literally with a clamp. Well, if you choose to do it, of all aspects of your life. Money, family. Hold on. Focus, where your head's at, what you're focusing on, your fitness, and the fun elements in your life as well. And from that moment there, mate, just never look back.
That is an incredible story. And I'll tell you what, I think Paul, I've obviously not done any of Paul's courses, but I do think generally Paul puts out the best stuff on the internet. And I've had a more conversation with him recently in DMs about how good his content is regularly. And he's just so unbelievably fucking honest and himself. And I think that resonates with people who are struggling because it's, as you said, life plays the victimhood. We have two worlds in this now. We have people that play the victim or people that make it look online that they have all the shit together. So you've got people that are struggling and look up to people that feel like they're so intimidating. Or you have people that are just not taking responsibility of their life. And then you have this guy in the middle, like Paul, and there's a few of them. That's like, look, I still struggle too. But look, I've made something of myself and I can drag you through kicking and screaming. Yeah. And that sort of like non-bullshit, it's still going to be hard, but it's going to be better, is a great message.
Yeah. Like, I mean, what I'm trying to say here is he did some stuff like, he's open about it, like cocaine use that I wonder, like, I mean, it's just a thought, like, he must be one tough motherfucker to have that addiction, overcome it, run a multi-100,000 pound business, have an amazing wife, lead an amazing coaching business, support. There's loads of us within the program now, and also now be a shining light to his two kids. Yeah. And so I'm not a father yet. I want to be one day. But like, again, another impact. If I can give my children an experience of life that Paul does now, then I feel like one of your biggest impacts on earth is like what you leave behind. And if you can leave kids with great morals that are nice to other people, that have seen cool things, that have been to cool places, and know how to treat other people with respect, dignity, and also know how to get themselves motivated and not rely on other people, I think you've done your job.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. Like, going into this, and like delving a little bit into your story, I know it's not exactly from the start, but you mentioned obviously that Christmas Day moment that made look out and get mentoring. Like, you obviously mentioned one thing with being unhappy in a relationship and not necessarily being sure why, but I think big cathartic moments like that where you have those sort of like, not so much breakthroughs, but like you hit a wall moments are eclectic of a number of things. Like, what do you think led you to that position? Because there are people that are going down that road now may not even realize it until they have their own Christmas Day moment. Like, what contributed to that for you?
I know, like, I think it's really easy now. I'm coaching other people to do it. If we rattle off, let's say, I reckon I could get 5 things that I wasn't doing on a daily basis that would affect your mood and health anyway. Was I drinking? I'm not saying hydration helps mental health, but it definitely helps you as a person. So was I drinking 2 to 3 litres of water a day at a time? Was I relying too much on caffeinated drinks and fizzy drinks at the time? Yeah, probably. Was I sleeping as much as I probably could? No. Did I meditate? Did I take 10, 15 minutes out of the day with absolutely nothing, no screen time, all those sorts of things? No, I didn't sleep very well. Sorry, no, I didn't meditate. No, I didn't take that time out of the day. Was I over watching explicit content online? Yeah. Do I now? No. It's fucking horrendous for your mental health and how you feel. What else?
Why do you think that is? Because the topic now is like, clickbait extremes are the things that go viral these days, right? So now you either have the porn or you have the nofap, right? And obviously, like, there is a massive middle ground here, right? Why do you think that it is terrible for your mental health?
So I don't think it was necessarily that specifically that was bad for my mental health. I think it was if we look at a bath of cocktail, right? Chuck a bit of that in, chuck a bit of that in, chuck a bit of that in, chuck a bit of that in. Basically, I say basically because it's not basic at all. But life now with social media, porn, drugs, alcohol, even Netflix is all diverted for you as a shortcut to pleasure.
Yeah.
And if you keep taking the shortcut to getting quick hits of dopamine and pleasure, you soon forget that this is a real made up analogy. The best walk through mountainous river regions of beautiful scenery before you get to your final destination of that quick dopamine. And people would rather go 100 meters sprint down a horrible alleyway to get their little tiny milligram of dopamine, bang, than work for it. That's quite a generic sweeping statement. But I genuinely believe if you went through social media now and just like mentally polled people, how do you get your dopamine hits? Is it through hard work, exercise, getting out in sunlight, doing things like this, podcasting, something that may make you a little bit of extra cash on the side of as your normal business job? Sorry, terrible English. But anyway, we'll carry on.
Yeah.
Or do they play video games 8 hours a day? Are they tuning into Pornhub 6-7 times a week? Are they going out on a Saturday night and buying a ticket, having 5 pints, buying a ticket on a Friday night, having 5 pints, buying a ticket on a Saturday night, then feeling like shit on a Sunday and a Monday and a Tuesday? Carry on. Are they like, there are so many examples, mate. Are they saying they're going to watch one episode of Netflix and letting the timer tick down in the corner, 3, 2, 1, bang, you're in another episode of your favorite TV show, rather than going out for that walk you promised yourself? There's so many things that allow you to run down that alleyway really quickly, rather than take the nice path with all the amazing scenery on the side. And that's, I think, I was taking the quick alleyway. I wasn't looking at the scenery.
Do you think there's an element though, it's like it's a bit of like what came first, the chicken and the egg sort of thing? Because when I look at these things, and I don't think it changes the solution, so maybe it doesn't even matter. But when I look at these things now, people using porn more frequently, people not using their sleep, not sleeping enough, people watching too much Netflix, playing too much video games, and the times that I've struggled with this, and even some more recently, the times where I've realised I've gone down the dark alleyway too much are also the times where I've been the most overwhelmed in my life. And do you think that, like, is these things the problem, or is it the societal thing where, like, we're now bombarded with so many decisions? Like, I watched something really interesting recently where they did a study where they went round and gave people either a choice of 2 jelly beans, so 2 flavors, and they chose their flavor, and they asked them, how do you feel about your choice? And they were like, yeah, I feel good about my choice. And then he did the same thing with like 50 flavors, and everyone felt bad about their choice. They would go, oh man, I wish I'd chosen peach. I wish I'd chosen marshmallow. Yeah. And that's a sort of long way around in basically saying, like, we're at a point now where we have so many decisions, so many options. We can do everything. Like 50 years ago, our careers, our lives were mapped up for us. Now, there's a disadvantage of that. But because we've got so much overwhelm in our lives and everything is just coming at us, and people can can message us, email us, WhatsApp us any time of day, that people now are just looking for the escape. So rather than hardwiring the escape, you mentioned earlier with fat loss clients, it's like, we've got to find out the why. Why are they going for the snacks in the evening as opposed to going, let's stop the snacking? because that doesn't actually help them. What's the
No.
reason why they want to go to Snap? What's the reason why someone wants to go on Pornhub? What's the reason why someone wants to pick up the PlayStation controller? Because I generally think the world is more conducive to people just getting so overwhelmed and burnt out that they're just going, I just need something easy to give my brain a rest. I certainly feel that way.
Yeah. So psychologically, there are studies done that show if you can't see any progression within your life, you will. I mean, I can't think of the chemical, but it does create the like apathetic, anxious chemical that goes through your brain. If you look back and you don't see any progression. Now, what things like, I'm not saying Pornhub does this, but let's just use Netflix or gaming for an example. I'm not going to sit here and say I hate Xboxes. I hate play it. Like I'm one of the biggest football manager nerds you'll ever meet. Right? Love it. Absolutely love it. And you just got to ask my mates this. And I wanted to get this. If they do watch this, they're going to be like, what are you going on about gaming for? Because you fucking love it. And I'm going to take that one on the chin because I do love it. And when you get that gamer score thing pop up, bang, 40 points for doing this achievement on this Xbox game, or bang, 10 Manager of the Month awards in a row, you go, oh, there's that. You get that little dopamine hit. But that is literally, right, again, another analogy. If we had a box around me, you're focused on something that's not real. But as soon as you start implementing progression in your life, as well as, look, don't get me wrong, I literally love fantasy stuff. Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Vikings, like, it's fantastic. Go into another dimension because sometimes, like, life is shit and you need to not give too much of a fuck about things. Quoting Mark Manson. But actually, if you are solely reliant on those things to give you a little bit of a hit, make you feel a bit better, take that as your moment to go, right, within my life in general, where else can I get these nice feelings? Is it by spending more time with your best friends, your family? Is it by going out on those country walks, seeing really incredible places? Is it by thinking, oh, do you know what? I've always loved the idea of being a YouTube video maker. I'm going to start editing some videos and getting them online and seeing likes come through to like, because then at least you're improving in two ways there. Is it, I've always wanted to be a personal trainer, which seems to be something that a lot of people are doing at the moment, and credit to them because there's a lot of people who need your help to crack on. Like, and again, another little tangent, like there's not too many personal trainers. There are too many people that are unhealthy. And the more people that are out there willing to help them, the better. That is like, I hope I'm making sense. What I'm saying is there are many other ways in your life to get good feelings than the shit that, without being a conspiracy theorist, we're supposed to get shit from.
Yes, no, I agree with you there. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who maybe felt a bit stuck in life? Because this is all relative. Like all this advice is relative to the person who knows, okay, I need to go and do this, this, and this. But there are a lot of people out there, and I know this because I don't think I'm a special snowflake. And there's been times in my life where I've felt like this, where I've just felt stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to go next. I don't know what to work on, and, whether that is in life in general, and I just feel stagnant and not progressing, or whether that is, I know what I want to do. We spoke off air about algorithms confusing us, right? Like putting out content, knowing where you're going and nothing working. Like, what advice would you give to either one of those scenarios where it's not as easy as like picking a direction, because the direction is either not working or you don't even know where it is in the first place?
The trick to that is, let's go for the not working one first, and then you may need to remind me what the second question was. If something's not working and you're enjoying it, who cares? There are different levels to success, right? And this is where things get a little bit warped, especially with social media and stuff. There'll be absolutely no point in the whole world, like being real, of me and you comparing our podcast to Chris Williamson's and Joe Rogan's. There'd be no point. Does it give us something to inspire towards? Absolutely. Like, but if we was to compare every episode, how good does his content look? How many views on YouTube does his clip have? How many views on Instagram does his clip have? How many downloads has it had a day today? Like, we would get overwhelmed, let's use that word, and we would probably think, oh, fuck me, we've got a lot of work to do. Now, you can take that as one or two ways, because you can say, well, I'm having a great time doing it, though, which I am, you are, so fuck it. I'm going to carry on anyway. And my level of success is, I see recently you got 10,000 downloads, mate. Like, it's insane. Also, 100 and something episodes, doubly insane.
Almost 2 years old. Almost to be about a couple of months away.
Mine was you do 2 episodes a week sometimes, so you're ahead of me on that front. But mine's also 2 years old. The amount of people that do things for short term without seeing any form of, like, let's say financial gain, if that's what they're after, or social, like, maybe clout. They're not big, social clout, that will just give up. I think if you get to 21 episodes of a podcast, you're in the top 10% of podcasts automatically, because 90% of them don't go past 20 episodes.
I have heard that before, yeah.
Which just shows, like, I think that just goes back to my main point a minute ago around, like, quick hits. The first, they say you get dopamine by talking about what your big goals are. And sometimes that's good enough for some people. Oh, I've been guilty of this. Well, I say I've been guilty of this so far. I really want to write a book, mate, about 5 life lessons that changed my life, or something like that, right? And talking about it makes you feel good. Oh, yeah, little book on a shelf with Harry Purdy wrote on it. But doing the fucking thing will be the thing that gives you the biggest feeling. Yeah. But people sometimes stop, is what I'm saying, at just talking about it. Don't, because action, the old cliche saying, mate, action speaks louder than words. What was the second question, Si?
Yeah, so it was that, and then what about someone who's just so lost in life that you don't even know where to even start with this?
So in the podcast that we did previously, we spoke about reframing things. Now, being stuck for me, a lot of people use as a negative, like, it's a negative tone around being stuck, right? But if we do this quickly and do the whole thing that you spoke about on my podcast around reframing, okay, you're stuck. But on the grand scheme of things within life and the planet, how many things have you done in a percentage? The answer would probably be, like, I reckon no more than, less on a great, on somebody that's done a lot of things, 10%, 5% of avenues that they could have gone down. Yeah. So that means that you've got 90% of things or hobbies or sports or, like, artistic things that you haven't done that you could try. I spoke to this about, funny enough, it's not very often that somebody will get me into, like, a coaching headspace on a podcast because I'm the host. But Ryan said to me, what would you say to somebody who's just gone 30 that doesn't feel like there's any point starting any big goals? I'm like, you're literally pocketing yourself into not being able to move because you're already labeling yourself negatively by saying you're over 30. It means nothing, like, absolutely nothing. If I, like, let's say I'm running this podcast when I'm 50, and when I'm 50, I get that social clout. How, like, that would be literally the sickest thing ever, wouldn't it? A 22-year-old podcast. No, well, I don't even know how old it would be. Yeah, 22 years old podcast that eventually makes it, right? Like, that's cool. But what I said to him was, feeling stuck and feeling like you've done all you can at 30, if you flip the mindset on that to be excited about the possibilities you could do with the stuff you haven't done as a 30-year-old or 32-year-old, then automatically you've literally switched something within your brain, if you can believe that. And the way you believe that is by actioning stuff that you haven't done. So is it you want to, like, you're maybe a little bit past it for, you've played rugby, you feel like you've played rugby for too long, but you now go get involved in a tag rugby team, right? That's a real low level thing. Is it that you've seen your mates start a podcast and you really want to give it a go. Great. Try it. See if you like it. Like, there are so many possibilities to try within life. Not to say you're stuck, because I've been there. You've been there. It's very easy to feel like you're stuck. I had a terrible week last week. I posted about it yesterday, where I just I knew that I should do something, but I just wasn't. I injured my trap as well, which didn't help. Really bugged me. So like all of the things that I'm working towards on a fitness level, I couldn't do. I couldn't train in the gym properly. I couldn't train for my half marathon. But there were other things I could have done that I chose not to. Work towards my social media goals. Get some extra content out for the podcast, right? There's always something to do. As soon as you start, I'm going to say one of the phrases I used earlier about dropping into victim mode. As soon as you go into victim mode, and unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we've done it. Saying you're stuck is playing the victim. Now, right, how do I get from being in victim mode to taking action on this shit? It's by doing something about it. That's I know it sounds harsh, but within all elements that people struggle, mental health, physical health, business not doing well, relationship not doing well, what are you doing about it though? Like, it's all very well and good complaining about it, but what are you doing about it?
Absolutely. I think that's a message that sort of gets lost now. It's one of those things that people almost, as you said, it's the victim mode thing again, but people discredit that we can work out of these things. Now, neither of us are saying that we can cure depression or anxiety by just going for a walk and thinking better. But if you don't do any action, this is never going to happen. Like, you could go to all the therapy in the world, but the therapist is going to give you stuff to do. It's going to be a hard road. So at some point that's got to be done. So I still think that this demonization of putting one foot in front of the other, my opinions, is so misguided, because people do need to take more responsibility.
100%. 100%. It was, there's that phrase, right? And don't get me wrong, it is great. It's okay to not be okay. But go back to the start. You are not okay. So start doing something about the not being okay, right? It's fine. I've been there. Christmas Day, 2020, low as fuck. But the only reason I'm at where I'm at now, and don't get me wrong, it's like, if we go to that level of the screen again, like success-wise, I'm like here. Like, that's me looking at myself. But other people, this is where inspiration comes in, would say, mate, you're doing so good. Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that. But it's only because I've done something. And I know that sounds so basic, but it's only because, I've had help, and I've been fortunate to be in a position to get some assistance and coaching from a phenomenal guy. And I've got an amazing, an amazing network around me. That was a bit of a tongue twister. But at the end of the day, I could have the best coach in the whole world. I could have the best PT in the whole world. You still got to turn up. You still got to turn up.
I completely agree. And I think the only difference in those scenarios of you talking about success, the only difference is perspective. If you can sit there and go, you can sit there and go, I'm not successful because of X, Y, and Z, and someone else thinks you are successful because of X, Y, and Z, the only thing that's changed is a change of perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, how do you change that? How do you change that perspective in yourself? And do you think, this is a question I've asked a few people actually, because I generally think this is the case, and I don't know if it's just grumpy old man Simon, but I generally think since the pandemic, victimhood's become more apparent, and I feel that more people are looking for the easy way out. I use this analogy. A few years ago when I started in the PT industry, not saying this is the right way to go, but all of our clients got steak and nuts. Everyone went low carb for the first 2 weeks, and MyFitnessPal didn't exist. So we just had a meal plan. You just went for it and go, right? And people got results. Oh, yes, there were people that struggled. Yes, there were people that made mistakes, but everyone gave it a go. And now I look at the fitness industry, it's like, if people aren't getting a WhatsApp every 30 minutes, they're going to fall into a box of donuts. And I was having this conversation with a few guests recently. I was like, do you think now that it's the true action taking is rarer?
Delay, yes. and I'm sorry to go back to a previous point, but I do believe it's because 30 years ago, no, not 30 years ago, because I can't. Yeah, all right, fuck it, we'll go with that. 20 to 30 years ago, you had to do more to feel good. Now, you can be 23 stone, sat on the sofa with absolutely no intention of doing anything within the day. You can order anything you want at the press of about 3 buttons. That can be clothes, food, whatever you want. Literally whatever you want. You've got... I'd hate to actually know what the algorithm behind how many hours of TV are available to you to watch. Plus other entertainment on the sides. So unless you see the value in doing proper action, as you phrase it, then you're not going to, are you? I know that sounds ridiculous, but you're not.
There's more barriers to entry now as well, right? Like, just as you're saying, that sort of resonated. It's like, before, let's use getting in shape as an example, right? You have to have the ability to delay gratification. That's a non-negotiable. You're going to have to say no to foods you want. You're going to have to say no to drinks. You can say no to occasions every now and again. So, whereas, let's say 25 years ago, use your example, if you wanted to get in shape, you wouldn't have to say no to as much.
Yeah.
Now, there are so many things competing for your enjoyment, so many things that are easier, that nowadays, literally, you have what you ask him to do, the sacrifice has to be better than so many options that are nice and comfy than ever before. And I think that's why things that are, and I like both of these things, by the way, but these are just great examples of inventions that would be laughed out of Dragon's Den 10 years ago, because people are so comfortable, they're seeking discomfort. Ice baths, flotation tanks, like them both. But that would not be a thing 5 years. That's a stupid... Floating in a big bathtub in the dark and getting in an uncomfortable icy water is not something that people would seek out to do 15, 20 years ago.
Nah. It's bizarre because I actually made a post on this the other day. I saw a quote and then it really dinged with me. Do you mind if I'm going to have a quick look for it? I basically said, because it's on a mindset thing. I think it's one of the best posts I've done recently. Make no mistake, discomfort is coming for you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Now, I actively try and seek discomfort in my life now. Now, I don't mean I'm like trying to hurt myself or do stupid shit. I just mean I get up in the morning and chuck myself in 90 seconds of cold water, because you're stood there, butt naked, 7:30 in the morning, and your brain is going, what the fuck are you doing, Harry? Do not put me in there, you stupid twat. But you have to overcome that, and you step into it, and that 90 seconds, like... Paul Mort's first ever tip for me on cold showers was breathe out. I mean, Wim Hof is the guy to go to, but Paul Mort spoke to me about it first. Breathe out.
I've done a Wim Hof event.
Push that air out and you will gain control of your breathing. Now, I do this when I need to in the week, when I know that I've got something I need to go into. At the weekends, a little bit more relaxed about it because I go and play football, a bit more chilled out on a Saturday morning. But doing that within the first 45 minutes of you getting up is you seeking discomfort before anything's come and smacked you in the face in the day. So if you can get into 90 seconds of, I don't know how cold that water is in the shower upstairs, but it's fucking cold. Before
mine's involuntary. I turn on a nice warm shower and every 3 seconds it goes cold for a couple of seconds and then goes back to hot. So I don't have a choice about cold showers. I have to.
But yeah, so what I'm saying is, before somebody's come and pissed you off, before the cars drove in front of you, before you've had a really annoying call, I don't know, there's many examples that could come and smack you in the face in the day. If you get smacked in the face first, excuse my terrible analogy, then anything else technically could be you're giving yourself an advantage to make it easier.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that in terms of sort of like almost trying to seek that bit of discomfort. And that's something I learned from the Wim Hof event of just sort of like, and how you can get yourself comfortable in discomfort, which is another very, very interesting sort of thing. But I do think it's true that people are seeking out these things more because life has become infinitely easier in a lot of ways, but also infinitely harder in other ways, because while it's harder to delay gratification, there are so many options for us. Like every time you go onto Deliveroo, you're now stressed because you don't know which restaurant to choose. Or when you're on Netflix, there's too many options. Life was less stressful when you could just pick on 3 channels and choose something. And I think sometimes the choice isn't always a good thing.
I've just had this like little brainwave there. It's almost like choosing your worries. So if you're choosing your worry to be, shit, I've got to get in this cold water for 90 seconds every morning, because your brain will actively seek something to fucking worry about. I've been there. Like, it will. When your focus isn't driven towards something that you want it to be driven towards, that you want to be worried about. So, like, what are my worries at the moment? They're like, where are my next clients going to come from? Who's my next big banging podcast guest going to be? Is my trap going to be sorted so I can play football this Saturday? Like, am I going to be able to get a last minute physio session in this week? These are things that I'm choosing to be focused towards. Now, if we flip back to a question where you asked me what got me to that point, well, I had nothing in my life that was causing me healthy anxiety, healthy worry. So my brain was going, oh shit, you don't feel very good today, Harry. You're going to commit suicide. Like, saying that out loud is fucking ridiculous. Like, it is ridiculous. But it just shows how easy it can be from being not feeling 100% to not taking your attention away from that. And like, I mean, like everybody wakes up, right? And they don't, some days you're going to feel a little bit worse than others on a mental level. Not going to be able to communicate as well. You're not going to be as positive as you are some days. And I think one of the biggest things on that front is that's cool. That is it's okay to not be okay. But then set some intentions for that day. Like, you have actively, brilliantly, by the way, if you're self-aware enough to know that you're not feeling 100% as you, that's class. Like, hat off to you, because there are many people that take that as just normal, right? And that means that you're aspiring to be better than what you are. But what do you need to do? Who do you need to become in that day to make you feel, let's say, here to here?
And we all know it. We all know it's like something where we've woke up and we're feeling a bit miserable and a bit down and a bit like pessimistic. And something's happened in our day. We get someone giving us a compliment. We get a nice phone call. We get a client sign up. We go and train, and it changes our day. And one thing I always work with people on is like making people understand quite maybe a pessimistic viewpoint, but I do think it is quite empowering. It's like most days in your life are meh. Most days in your life aren't great or shit. They're just in the middle, right? So if you can create things where you are pushing forward on the days when they're meh, then you will get more opportunity for good days to happen, because you've built up this almost this repertoire of like good karma, if you believe in that sort of thing.
For 100%.
Now, like I another phrase when you say you choose your worries, I was like, I'm going to one up that. There's a phrase I heard. I cannot remember who said it now, but you choose your regrets.
Oh yeah, nice.
It's not that you don't have regrets. You choose your regrets. So you may regret not starting the £1 million business, but when you're in the £1 million business, you might regret not spending more time with your family, or you might regret, like, even a small regret. I regret not playing more video games.
Yeah.
But there's always a regret, and I think, and that was a powerful one for me. It's like when you're not trying to make the perfect decision, because in case I regret something down the line, it's like, well, I'm going to regret something either way, so I've just got to make a decision. Yeah. And see it through. And
that is being stuck, right? Like, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. People aren't sure what regret they want to take. It's, are they going to regret putting some content out on social media because they're scared of what their friends think? or are they going to regret? Hold on, I'm trying to phrase this correctly. Are they going to regret Are they regretting the worry of putting content out because they're scared of what their friends think, or in 20 years' time, or are they going to regret the worry about what their friends think, right, and not caring? And also, I just wanted to add a little point on what you said. When you wake up and film there, somebody can have an impact on your day. I love the thought that even though you're feeling shit, and this is something I try and put to my clients as well, if you're feeling shit, but you can one-up somebody's day by telling them something that makes them feel good, by buying them something as a spontaneous little gift, or by just being nice to somebody in the street. Like, mate, I remember one of my lowest ever days. I was out with work on the M5 and saw a guy outside and this isn't me like looking for like kudos or anything, but I just remember the training came in. Right, I'm not feeling very good today. What can I do for somebody else? A homeless fella outside of services getting bought the biggest Angus burger, like triple layer with chips and a drink from me. And I just said, there you go, mate. Like, just makes you, honestly, mate, like knowing that he's fed and he's happy and he's got something warm. And that's literally one thing I did in that day to improve somebody else's life. Happy days. And if you could, like, I know it sounds very hippy dippy and happy clappy and cheesy, but if you can have an impact positively on somebody's day, it does make you feel good, mate, every day. So try and do it. Like, anyone that's listening to this, just try and have, when you go away from listening to this podcast, everybody, the person you love the most or whatever, just like tell them. Just go and tell them.
Yeah. I love that. And I also think it's like there's no such thing as a selfless good deed. And that sounds like another pessimistic thing, but it's like you being nice to someone on the street, you might think it's a nice thing for them, but it's enough to change your mood around. So simple.
Yeah.
Like giving a little bit of money to a homeless man in London, like sometimes when I was having a bad day, changed my day because it just kicked, on the way to work, I did something that put me in a positive light and gave me a bit of perspective of the impact that I can have. But like, we've spoken a lot here about what people can do to change their lives. And you said earlier on about you, being a manager for, is it Montacute?
Yeah.
Have I got
Yeah,
right
you've nailed it.
But like, at what point did you come to the conclusion that you were too overweight to be a player? Why? Why was that the decision?
Oh, I had a good team, man. Like, I was very fortunate. I'm so fortunate, mate. Like, I live in a little town, used to live in a village called Stokes-upon-Hamden, and they were our biggest rivals, believe it or not. But anyway, cut a long story short, I had the best, like, college life, school life, like, compared to some people again, like, just not challenging. Like, everybody, like 90% of people that I was in a network with when I grew up were class. And then, luckily enough, they also were good at football. So eventually when we left college and we turned 18 and I was like, so again, I grew up watching Montacute FC men's. Like, my dad was secretary every Saturday. Me and my really good friend, Luke Vivash, who was a year younger than me, would get in the car with his dad and my dad and we'd go. My dad would play every now and again, but he was getting to the end of his career. And what I'm saying is I was brought up around local football, right? It was the thing. It was cool. The leagues were massive. And so when I turned 18, what did I want to do? Montacute didn't exist anymore. I wanted to be the guy that started it again. I was. And the first season we started in Division 3, like, we won the league. And it was because I just tapped into like a network. And don't get me wrong, I know a lot about football, but when it comes to grassroots football, it is genuinely just a lot about who you know, who you can pull in to help you out. What was the original question? Because I'm rambling about Montacute now.
It was just like, what made you decide to be an off the
pitch? Too big. I was too big, right? So I had a good team. And I remember coming on against, this was years later, still had a good team, but there were also better teams because we'd got up to the Premier Division in the local area. And I'd always sit on the bench, always. And I remember, do you know what, mate? One of the things that always sticks up here was we got jackets, Area jackets. And if you know anything about the brand Area, it's made in Italy, and Italians are thin and fit. So they're skin tight. And I had to get mine in triple XL. Anyway, moving on to the story. Came on against a team called Temple Combe, and they had a lad called Harry Rogers playing centre midfield, and he's a very good player. And I came on to man mark him. I think we were losing 4-0. But I came on for 20 minutes, tried to mark this guy for 20 minutes, and at the end of the game, was fucked. Felt like I'd run a marathon, and in the dressing room afterwards, we'd lost 6-1, I think, and it was we were going to lose the game anyway. It was one of them. But my impact on the game, for me, not for anybody else, because we'd already lost the game, was shit, that was bad. And it just knocked my confidence even more than probably what it could have done anyway, because I was already starting myself on the bench. And then that season also, we got to a cup final. And within a football squad in grassroots football at the time, you could have 16 players in your squad, 11 outfield players, 5 people on the bench. And I remember purposely choosing somebody that hadn't really been involved all season over me, because I knew that they would have had a more positive impact on the game if they were needed in the cup final than I would have. And that, mate, was the morning that changed my outlook on my size and everything. I was obviously manager of the team, so I was really nervous about this cup final. So I woke up with nervous, happy energy at 6 o'clock in the morning and was so excited, but also really sad. All of my family were coming out to watch this game, all of my friends. There was going to be a lot of people there watching, but I wasn't playing. And genuinely, mate, I went out that morning to just get rid of some energy and to just be a bit more active than what I was being. I went to run a mile. It was literally a route from my house. I left the door, turned left, went down a little street, and then it would loop back on itself. And I'd join the main road again, and it would go back to my house. It was a mile. It was bizarre, but I couldn't run it. But that morning there was the trigger for me being 23 stone, not playing football and not confident and not happy, to where I am now, definitely. With a bit of a mindset struggle in the middle of it.
So if you don't mind me asking, you're 23 stones where you started. Where did you end up? Where are you now?
What am I at now? In kgs, 96.5. So I think I don't know what that is in stone, mate, because I've changed
14 and a half?
Yeah.
That's an incredible, almost, 10 stone, drop weight loss, right? So with how did that process look? What was the starting point? I'm assuming you didn't know much other than I'll go for a run and I'll play some football.
Yeah.
Right? How did this process look for you?
Mate, many awful avenues of unhealthy dieting, really. Do you know, one of the other things around that as well was I did lose loads of weight. And funny enough, a guy we spoke about earlier, Jake Woolmore, the Bears player, we used to train. But somehow we used to, we got in this routine 4 days a week. We'd get up at 7 a.m. in the morning and I'd go to the local gym. But I was actually thinking about this before the podcast started. It was just unsustainable, what I was doing. I was in a summer holidays from college. I reckon I must have lost 3 or 4 stone within that time. But it did go back on. Not as much, but it did go back on. But what I was doing was I was going to gym in the morning. There was a co-op across the road. I'd go in there and buy a £1 bag of salad. And I'd make a tuna, literally tuna salad for the week. It's disgusting when I think about it. We'll come into this in a minute. And I'd eat Rivitas as well for lunch. So I'd have salad mixed with tuna, mayo, Rivitas. And there was this big white pot at my dad's house that I used to use. And I used to put it in the fridge uncovered. And then if there was some left, I'd have that the next day. And then I'd have that the next day. And within this time, I was losing weight. And I looked good, but didn't really know what I was doing, mate. Knew nothing about calories, nothing about protein. I used to take this pre-workout thing that used to give me the awful tingles, like God knows what I was doing. What I'm saying
That'd be beta alanin.
yeah. Oh, mate, honestly, awful. But it was great. It gave me a starting point. I'd reduced my food. Let's not use the word calories yet. I exercised a lot. I was playing 7-a-side football as well at the time, so that was like cardio. And also at this point, I'd started running like 1 mile. I could run a mile, right? Like that was that. And then Jake went off to do whatever he was doing. Probably got picked up. I think it was Exeter Chiefs at the time, and I was just back to me, like old habits, same results, right? That was the first thing. Then when I started, sorry, mate, the story does go on. I became a security guard at Asda, the most sedentary job I could ever have had. And like when I look back at the things I was eating and that, it's just no surprise. Like I'd start at 5 a.m, 10 o'clock in the morning. Most mornings I'd have a phenomenally big breakfast that was cooked in the canteen and then wonder why I was exceptionally overweight. Other things I tried would be like mum would make me these couscous salad things. These are like famously laughed about in our family now because I used to fucking hate them, but I used to eat them.
Yeah.
Like, but I didn't enjoy it. So there you go. There's another reason why a diet failed. I genuinely tried I don't know if you remember the Special K, lose your waistline with Special K or whatever. Eat 2 bowls of Special K a day for breakfast and lunch and then have a proper meal. And then you wonder why you start putting on weight again when you go and like all of those things, mate. Tried them, got instant results, failed. And then when I was in my second proper full-time job, just stumbled across a James Smith live on Facebook. And again, that changed everything.
So what did you do from that live? I'm assuming he taught you about a calorie deficit.
He did.
But as we said earlier, I think before we came on air about the meal plan versus calories thing, and most people are rubbish at tracking calories. What was the journey like from once you said, okay, I know calories are a thing? Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know how to do it.
So actually, I spoke about this with Emma the other day. Like that tool can unlock thousands of doors if you are disciplined enough to carry it out, right? And I was, mate. I was. I worked out my calorie target with his free calculator, and just from there, lost weight. And bearing in mind, by this point, like I wasn't 23 stone. I was at that like plateau of I'd lost 4 stone by many different other methods, by like running. I was probably like at that point, mate, I was probably fit, unhealthily fit. Like I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing as from an exercise point of view as like a 20 stone person, running a lot. And probably dropping my calories too much. Like, well, no, that's bullshit because I would have lost more weight. But you know what I'm saying? I was bouncing between the two.
I think on paper a lot of people they think they've dropped their calories massively, but when they realise because it's so low and their activity's so high, so their appetite's ramped up, you just start picking at things and start snacking at things, but you don't track them because that's not part of your tracking schedule 100%. You've already put in place for yourself. So it's like, oh, I'm only eating 1,500 calories, but you're not. You're eating 1,500 calories plus the rest that you don't admit to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I know it sounds really basic. There were obviously things around me and habits that I would do. I remember a lad, like I used to work at a place called Kuhn and Nagel, and we used to pack helicopter parts. And luckily, again, and this is about an environment thing, there was a lad in there that used to go to the gym. And when I started calorie tracking, he knew a little bit about it as well. And I showed him James Smith, and we both just clicked, like to the point where we both went and watched James Smith a couple of years ago live. Like it was our thing. Like he was the guy that helped us get really healthy. But obviously, calories is one thing. Mindset around it is another, because you have to know what to do, but you also have to be disciplined enough to do it. So from there, it was a case of like learning your calorie target, seeing the results. And genuinely, mate, I remember being on the scales at 135 kg. I reckon by the time I left Kuhn and Nagel, which was probably like 4 years ago now, 5 years ago, it dropped down to 118. We used to have to weigh our parcels, mate, as well. So just like things not falling into place because, of course, but I could get on the scales every morning, whether you think that's healthy or unhealthy, and be aware. Before that, I didn't have a clue. Not a clue. In my old job, I had no idea. So knowing that I was X weight and I was unhealthy actually really helped. It was a motivator rather than a demotivator. Does that answer your question?
100%. I interesting thing about like is daily weighing healthy? I'm a very firm believer that for the most part it is. Now, don't be wrong. There are exceptions to the rule. There are people that get too much mentally involved into their body weight, and you need to move away from it. But in the same way that, you know, like we were talking about meal plans earlier, and I think they have value in teaching people structure and stuff. And, you know, and you can teach someone to have more flexibility with food as they learn. I think, in a way, going back to what we're saying about people finding the easy way out and almost playing the victim, I think the people that demonize daily weight and the people that demonize calorie tracking, unfortunately, are not those exceptions to the rule that do need to stay away from those things. It's often the people that they've tried it didn't work for them, so that the tool is the problem, rather than them being the problem. Like the daily weight thing, I think that if you want to get free from the fear of the scale, weigh yourself daily, because you're now going to start to understand. Look, if I only take my weight once a week or never take my weight, I'm never going to see progress if I never take it ever, because I'm never going to know what it is. Or B, if I take it infrequently, if I go up 1 week, like Slimming World and Weight Watchers, I put all my self-worth like I must have failed. And you get these really horrible binge and restrict cycles and things like Slimming World, where people diet, get to their weigh-in, finish the weigh-in, go to Burger King, I've got to weigh in again for another week.
Yeah.
Whereas if you took it daily, you can go, oh, once every month I go up if you're a woman. Or every time I have a big meal in the evening or I have a worse night's sleep, it goes up. And it's like, it's okay, because I know that. I've got so much data to back up this thing that I just know as long as the trend's going down, it doesn't matter.
100%.
So one of the things you speak about in your journey, obviously you mentioned the mental battle. You spoke about patience a lot on your social medias. So I'm assuming this is a particular sticking point for you. Like how did you, and it is for everybody else, like how did you manage to stay patient? You had a lot of weight to lose. This is going to take a while. How do you stay patient through that time?
So at the start of my journey, there was definitely a sense of impatience with regards to where I was. Like I was immature, and girls has to come into the conversation as well, because when you're 23 stone, I'll tell you, mate, you ain't a confident lad when it comes to that side of things. Even when you're 20 stone, 19, like confidence is something that has to be earned. And people will always tell me, like when I have conversations with people around, I used to be this way, like you would never have fancied me then or whatever. They go, oh yeah, it's all about the personality. Fuck off. Like seriously, it's not, because you would never have spoke to me like when I was 23 stone. It's just as simple as that. So that was a cause for impatience. You can see by the things that I tried how impatient I was, because I was looking for a quick fix to a situation that was going to take longer. However, one thing I take massive pride in now, Simon, is that I have sustained a gradual weight loss and health journey for a good amount of years now. And and this isn't me thinking that I'm better than other people whatsoever, but I'll always look back at my journey and say, mate, all of those failed things at the start led you to doing the healthiest drop of weight and body fat that you possibly could ever have done, because I've learned all of the tricks of the trade, all of the mindset stuff, whether I wanted to or not. I had to, because I was so low. All of the patience tricks of the trade, all of the scales tricks of the trade, all of the nutrition tricks of the trade, all of the sleep tricks of the trade, over such a long period of time now. I'm not the best coach in the world, but if you're coming to me with a problem of I'm impatient, I've been this weight a long time and I need to lose some body fat, I'm your guy, because I have it. I have the experience. I don't have thousands of clients like some people, because some people have got thousands of clients and no experience. I've got, let's say, a decade of being a fat lad to a healthy lad with I still love food, mate, but I know how to manage it now. And I think that, as you said at the start, the journey is my marketing for sure, and how other people choose me to be their coach.
I think that's a great closing point. And I think it's a lot of full circles there in sort of that point. In like, you still like your food, because that's another dopamine thing that people grab.
Yeah.
Food is my escape. Food's my release. And like, as you said, you've now managed to control it. It's not just the easy dark alley quick route anymore. It's just part of your life. So like, there's one closing question I always ask everybody.
Go on, mate.
And I want to ask this. I think it's be a good one for you. Tell me about a time where you've changed your mind about something.
Wow. Okay. Conflict used to be something that I would get involved in person and online quite regularly, whether that be political, whether it be my dad when I used to live with him. I used to be quite a reactive person, because things would trigger me quite often around opinions that other people had. And I have changed my mind about the person. This isn't coming out the right way I wanted to, but what I'm saying is I am not reactive anymore, because I look at everybody through the lens of, we're all human. If everybody thought the same way, the world would be boring. And I have to revert back to him again. One of Paul Mort's biggest ever catchphrases has stuck with me, is everybody's doing their best. And if you can take, as much as somebody might piss you off, and as much as somebody's opinion might be so far away from your truth, that's their truth at that time. And there's nothing on God's earth you can do about it. And what are you going to gain from, this is me talking to me now. The change of mind I had was, Harry, what are you going to get from trying to change this person's mind, apart from a potential argument or conflict? And that has changed me. I always was a nice guy with the potential to have an argument with somebody. Now, going full circle to the start of the podcast, I like to think I'm a nice guy that can help people change their mind in that front as well.
I love that. I think that's a really important message. So for people who want to get help with that, or their weight loss journey, or anything that you do, how do people find you?
They can come and find me at The Grassroots Guy on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, or even add me as a friend on Facebook. Name is Harry Purdy, Purdy. You can email me at grassrootsguypod@gmail.com. And yeah, that's it.
Hey, love that, man. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a genuine pleasure to be a guest this time.